Hey, I'm gonna call the meeting to order at exactly 6 p.m. Thank you everybody for being here. We have our minute taker and Mike, please, that's with timekeeping, thank you. For those of you in the audience who haven't had a chance to sign in to our signage sheet, I know Jennifer was walking around with that, but please do just write your name on that sheet so we can capture you in the minutes. And at this time, we're gonna open the floor to public comment. Yes, Mike. We don't.
It's hard on Zoom that you can't hear public comment when you're on Zoom, just for future reference. Nothing we can fix right now, but
Yeah. Well, we can just invite you up to closer because the owl is our mic for Zoom. It's closer to me.
Where's the best place to be zooming?
Right there.
I will zoom here.
If you can say your name, please. Yeah, start with a name.
So my name is Morgan Doan. I was born and raised right here, and I attended Beeman as well as Mount Aid. I loved the area and the school system so much that my husband and I decided that we wanted to raise our children here. We currently have one child in second grade and one in kindergarten in Beeman, and one that will be the part of the kindergarten class in 2025. I've written this letter with the help, collaboration, sweat, and tears of very many New Haven parents, and some of them stand here with me asking for help. We have come to speak to you today because we are concerned with the lack of support for students and teachers, as well as the lack of communication at Beeman. I'm sure we're not the only school having problems with dysregulation in students since COVID, but since our school is what we know and what we see, this is the one that we can speak to. We're going to share generalizations in this public meeting because we understand that there are privacy policies, but we are all willing to share our numerous stories at any point in private session. This all started for me when the kindergarten parents heard a rumor about a change in the class makeup for next year. There is some discussion about combining next year's first graders with next year's second graders and making 2 1-2 classrooms. We, as kindergarten parents, have had an amazing year with a kindergarten teacher and the class that the teacher has helped to mold. The students get along, they learn together, respect each other, and stand up for each other, all while learning not only math and reading, but social skills and proper behavior. We all wrote a letter and asked our principal and superintendent to please keep our classes together to continue to grow without the constant clear the classroom interruptions that we get emailed about almost daily. We received a very anticlimactic response that made it clear that we would not be part of the discussion for the class layout, and neither would the teachers. Despite a responding email asking for more information, as well as when decisions would be made and how they would be made, we have no answers to these questions. Because we are part of a small town, as you all are, and we all talk, the more we dug into this and the more we chatted with other parents, the more issues we have uncovered. We have heard stories of teachers asking for help with students and not getting it. We've heard stories of students having IEPs ignored. We've heard stories of parents trying desperately to get their kids help and nothing is done. We have heard stories of students ending up in extreme emergency situations directly related to overwhelmed teachers. We've heard stories of students in urgent counseling because they don't understand the explosive mental stress their peers are going through. We've heard stories of parents making the tough decisions to pull their kids out of Beeman because no one will listen to concerns and no one will help. The more we talk to people, the more disturbing it becomes. We're worried, right? We're worried for our kids, we're worried for our school, we're worried for our town, and we're worried for the future. We are concerned that there are good teachers that will leave the school or even leave the profession because these situations are so hard even with the proper support, the support that they're not currently getting. We are a group of determined parents who are asking how we can help, how we can support, and what we can do to fix these problems. And the beginning of the solution is communication. Thank you for your time, and we very much look forward to working towards a solution with you.
Thank you, Morgan. Any other public comments at this time? Okay. Our next item is an action item to approve the agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
So move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. Did you want to make any changes?
I would request that we move all of the executive sessions so that they're stacked one on top of another, rather than waiting till the very end of the meeting to add an anticipated executive session.
Everybody understand that?
So we have two at the beginning, so we'll go into an executive, we'll come out to do an action, we'll go back into an executive, come out to do an action, and then we'd have a third right after that, with no action required after the last one. Which would mean we'd push all the other agenda items further down the list. How are people feeling about that?
Question.
We're not able to stay until the end, so we can't, the board is supposed to be doing the first executive session, and we can't stay all the way till the end, so.
Right, we're saying we put all the executives at the front of the meeting,
Oh,
not
at
to
the
the,
front, not the
yeah,
back? Okay,
yeah.
sorry about that.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Any other board members have any other discussion about that?
So I think we have to actually amend
The motion.
the motion.
Okay.
Or did you?
I'll amend the motion to move the executive. To approve the agenda with the change to move the last executive session to the end of the first two executive sessions. So you have to vote on the amendment first.
You have
Or second.
Kathy seconds.
And for what it's worth, I just got confirmation that legal counsel is available earlier, so that will work there.
All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended to move the third executive to behind the first two? All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes.
Now we have to
Now go back in
approve
the
the whole.
agenda as amended.
Yes.
So, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So at this point, we're gonna enter our first executive session under T1 VSA 313A7, which is student academic record suspension or discipline. We as a board are gonna move to a different room to go into that executive session. I need to invite in Adora, Patrick, family members, and Jonathan Caccini. Can I please have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Kathy? I'll second. Kristen? All those in favor of entering executive session at 6:08 PM, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next thing is to take an action to appoint the board members to the two vacant Bristol seats. Can I please have a motion to appoint board members to the Bristol vacant seats?
So moved.
Kathy?
You should read your names.
Oh. Okay, so appoint board member, appoint to the two vacant seats, Daniela and Melissa.
So moved. Second.
Kristen first, and then Kathy, thank you. All those in favor of appointing Daniela and Melissa to the two vacant board seats, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
And maybe just for clarity for the record, last names.
Sutherland and Lori.
No, that's it. Okay, all right. So if you ladies just want to go see Jennifer real quick and you'll sign your oaths right now, you'll be voting members tonight. It is this time.
There's no turning back now.
Do we have any contacts ready? No, we don't. If you could, that would be great. Hey, friends. And so John will go into our third executive session under T1 VSA 5313 A1F confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body. And for this, we'll need to invite our counsel, Patrick and Beth McGeorge. First, we need to determine that the premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or persons involved at a substantial disadvantage. So can I please get a motion for that action that premature general public knowledge would clearly place us at a disadvantage?
So moved.
Kathy,
Second.
Mike? All those in favor of that action, that it will place us in a disadvantage, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Secondarily, we need an action to enter executive session under T1 VSA 5313 A1F for the confidential attorney-client communications, again, inviting Patrick, Beth McGeorge, and our legal counsel. Is that Dina tonight?
Yep.
Dina. Can I please get a motion for that?
So moved.
Barb?
I'll second.
Who wants it?
Go ahead.
Justin? Okay. All those in favor of entering executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we will enter our last executive session at 8:03 p.m. Okay. All right, it's 8:58. The thing we're on is the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Hold on one sec, okay. We do have to add one resignation to this list. I'm not sure what the procedure is to add that. Do we just,
I move to approve the consent agenda with the addition of the resignation of
Isabella Curtis.
Isabella Curtis.
Second.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda, as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Okay. The next thing we're into is the executive limitations monitoring reports.
I move to approve the monitoring report 2.7.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Brad.
Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion about monitoring report 2.7 compensation and benefits? These were sent to you under separate cover.
Board members.
Yeah, new
Will
book,
not
yeah,
be able to vote on
well,
this.
that's okay, yeah, exactly.
There'll be plenty of other monitoring reports for you to act on.
Yes.
Any comments or questions for 2.7?
I thought it was very clear. I think there's ample evidence, meeting compliance. I didn't see anything that raised concerns for me at least.
Agreed.
Anything else? Okay. Based upon the information provided, does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Based upon the information provided, does the board find that the data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Moving on.
Need a vote.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.7 compensation and benefits, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 2 abstentions, Daniela and Melissa. Okay. Now moving on. To approving monitoring report 2.8 communication and support to the board.
So moved.
Brad,
I'll second.
Kristen? Questions or comments for A 2.8? None?
Call the vote.
Okay, based upon the information provided, does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Based upon the information provided, does the board find that data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.8, communication and support to the board, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And 2 abstentions, Danielle and Melissa. Okay. Update for the financial report. Any questions or comments for Floyd? Hearing none. Move to should be ABCD, update superintendent's report. Any questions or comments? That report? Again, thank you as always for those reports. I love reading them.
Yep.
Second that.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move right along then to the board management and governance section. So can I please have a motion for adopting the updated fiscal year 25 budget to reflect the use of the education reserve funds? And there was an explanation attached to that.
So moved.
Steve? A second?
Second.
Mike? Any discussion? Everyone understands what, I don't know if you want to fill in maybe a little bit.
No, nothing really beyond what the explanation was. It was, everything we talked about last time is still true. It's just we had to show the added revenue on the revenue side, but we also had to show the added expense on the expense side, which effectively cancels each other out and produces the same tax implications we talked about. There's subsequent changes to the warning and ballot because we had to increase the budget figure by that 305,000. But that's all that's happening here. There's one other change we'll talk about
Yeah.
to the warning when we get there, but from a cost standpoint, we just had to account for that.
All those in favor of adopting the updated fiscal year 25 budget to reflect the use of the education reserve funds, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. So for B, the action to adopt the warning and ballot, we actually need to change the date that's listed on the warning to account for how long it takes to mail the flyers to people's houses. So instead of listing 4/2 on the warning, the new date would be 4/9 to account for the mailing time.
And that's the date to request the absentee ballot. We don't anticipate the hard copy mailed ballot or mailed flyers, which indicate the date by which you have to request your absentee ballot, getting into mailboxes until the 4th or 5th of April. So to have a date to say in this thing, you're gonna get on the 4th that you had until the 2nd to get your absentee ballot request in, didn't feel like a good approach to take.
May I please have a motion to
So
adopt?
that's something we have to amend to.
Correct.
In our motion.
Amend, yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody happen to know whether the town clerks are accepting requests now for people who are concerned and just want to make sure they get their absentee ballot?
I don't know that. I know Jennifer was just in touch with the town clerk today to just sort of understand the implications of this and this is still obviously the preferred direction to go. And that, because the other question is that with the turnaround time, right? If somebody gets this on the 4th or 5th, or if we say the 9th, is there time if somebody makes a request on the 9th that they actually get their absentee ballot and can send it back? And I think the answer is it's tight, but yes.
Do we also need to add the new board members to this warning? I don't know,
Another great question.
need is the right word, but is that the right thing to do?
It might be required.
Because of the action today to act on that. Yeah.
Oh, well, then need is the right word.
They're now board
No, it's just the
members.
right way, it's the legal.
Yeah. So for B, we need 2 amendments then?
That's what I'm thinking.
On that one.
Yeah.
And do we all have to sign them tonight?
I don't know that we'll be in a position to make the amendments
Yeah,
and print
and
and
then-
have it signed, so,
Well, I mean, we can,
Come by or something.
yeah.
everybody's gonna
You
combine.
have to go by the office. and
Central
sign.
office. Oh, okay.
We can check on an electronic as well. We've done electronic signatures for other things, so that may be applicable
Okay.
here.
Is the 9th, is there no wiggle room? Like we went from the 2nd to the 9th, which was a 7-day move. Is there no wiggle room there at all? I know we don't want to go further in the calendar, but I am 7-day turnaround with the way the mail works these days is concerning to me. Since we were so concerned about absentee ballots at the last meeting.
Yeah. I think there's perhaps some wiggle room, but the 4th, we don't know if it's the 4th or 5th when this will be arriving in mailboxes. So let's assume it's the 5th, that's a Friday. Then you have the weekend, and so Monday's the 8th, so. I don't think we could have it any earlier than the 8th, so there's not a lot of wiggle room.
That's the day we're all supposed to stay home, right?
And not.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
There's that.
Yeah.
Well, we could get out on front porch forum or otherwise earlier. this
Yeah, so
information.
we can get it out electronically. I think the intent is tomorrow we'll get the flyer out, and I have copies of the flyer, but which speaks to the 9th as the date, so a lot of folks will get the electronic notification right away. It's just feeling like the mail, at least at this point, the plan was we would commit to a hard mailing as well. And that won't get in mailboxes until the 4th or 5th.
Right, okay.
Which is also still a pretty tight turnaround. I mean, the printer gets them tomorrow and they'll be in mailboxes next week on Thursday or Friday, so.
Have we reached out to like the Addison Independent for them to post it as well, do an article on the quick turnaround and this whole, they're gonna wanna see all this, obviously, but. if they can-
Lauren's on right now.
Aaron's on.
Maren Howard.
Oh, Maren, yeah, good work. Just stress that, that tight time frame, and if you need an absentee ballot, you've gotta ask for it right away.
So can I get a motion to amend the warning, adding board members and changing the date from 4/2 to 4/9? Justin? Second, Kylie, thank you. All those in favor of amending the warning to add new board members and to change the date from 4/2 to 4/9, please say aye.
Aye.
Cool, sorry again, Steve, correct me, discussion.
Well, I just think we want to say approve the warning as amended, not just amend it.
Do we have to make a motion to amend it and then go back and include it?
That's where I thought you were going, was
Yeah.
amend what
Amend
you
it
see
and then come
here
back
and
and
then
approve
approve
it.
the amendment.
Oh, okay. All right.
Cool,
Thank you.
all right. All those in favor of amending? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions, okay. And then can I please get a motion to adopt the amended warning and ballot? So moved. Kristen,
Second.
Justin,
And this amount is the amended amount.
Go to 300,000.
Right, so it'll reflect the amount in the updated budget that you approved.
okay, all those in favor of adopting the amended warning and ballot, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Action item C is to authorize the superintendent to make hiring commitments throughout the year.
So this is something we do on an annual basis. So by statute, the board has the authority to hire and fire licensed professionals, not the superintendent. Under policy governance and under, I think, typical governance, that responsibility is usually delegated to the superintendent. And the board typically takes action in a consent agenda, which is what you just did tonight with resignations. Knowing that that's the case from a statute perspective and knowing that the hiring season is a very dynamic time of year, this is no exception. It's always been our practice to give me sort of this blessing from the board to go ahead and make hiring commitments. The alternative would be so we have Robinson principal candidates that are finalists tonight that are kind of cycling through. The committee's going to meet tomorrow. The committee will likely have someone they want to move forward. In the absence of having this authority delegated to me, we would need to wait until the April 30th board meeting for me to actually secure someone with a contract and a commitment. Probably who we want isn't going to hang around until the end of April to get that. So this basically, in a really public way, says, go forth, superintendent, and make sure that you secure these great people to fill positions that we need filled next year. And you'll get there. You'll see it on a future consent agenda to take official action as required by statute.
So how does this affect, say, our budget goes down?
So part of my responsibility, so as we talked last time, I have to issue enough RIF notices to be secure in a potential sort of worst case scenario. So my approach to that is I'm going to assume until we have a budget pass, I'm going to assume we can only spend this year's amount of money. There is potential that the eventual budget that passes is even less than this year's amount. If we find ourselves in that situation and we can't make up that money somehow by not filling things or somehow cut those costs, that would put us in a position of deficit spending. And we would have to make up whatever we overspend in the future budget, in the subsequent budget. So there are mechanisms to make it whole eventually. But the approach is, I would assume we have this year's dollars, which is 3.1 or 3.2 million less than that original budget that went out. So that's what I'm moving forward with. So as you saw, there isn't an agreement to change the April 1 date. So I'll be working the next few days to identify where would those savings come from to get us down to this year's budget. And then really only for the licensed professionals whose negotiated agreement says that contracts have to be issued by April 1st, do I need to issue RIF notices to anyone that would be impacted? There may be other positions that would be impacted to get down to the savings, but because we don't have to issue contracts by April 1 for those other positions, I also then don't need to issue RIF notifications by April 1. So if the budget fails and we do have to realize some of these cuts that I'm talking about, and their deadline comes to issue contracts, then I'd be in a position to issue RIF notices to other sort of categories of personnel. But I'm not interested in issuing more RIF notices than I need to at any point in time. So right now it's going to be confined to licensed professionals covered by the collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? And then please have a motion to authorize the superintendent to make hiring commitments.
So moved.
Daniela,
Second,
Kathy? All those in favor of authorizing the superintendent to make hiring commitments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
yes,
Sorry. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. The next action item is to approve the budget flyer. It's coming around to you.
And I'll sort of set the context a little bit while that's circling. So the conversation at the last board meeting emphasized the importance of really sticking to what's different in this budget compared to the last budget from town meeting day. So that's the approach that we took here. Trying to keep it high level, but also opportunities for folks that wanted to dig deeper, because some of the other feedback we got about the last budget flyer was that it was sort of too much crammed in too little space. It was hard to read and hard to digest it all. So this is a much simpler approach, focused very specifically on what's different with this budget compared to the last one. Working hard not to go back to how does this new budget compare to our current budget? Because that's not really the comparison we're looking to make anymore. It's about, it's sort of the message I took away from our conversation was, how do we say to the community, we heard you, and this is how we responded?
That QR code is very good.
Yeah.
Say that, we heard you, and this is how we responded. Like, is there a reason we can't just say that?
No.
Or could it be the kind of thing that we put out on Front Porch Forum, where that's a little bit more friendly, non-official? Like, it's past my bedtime, y'all, like.
Can you expand on that a little bit, what you mean by?
Well, like really clear communication is super helpful. And this is, I know all the really important information, but just to be able to say like, we heard you, we heard your concerns, we took that, we've taken it very seriously. This is what we've come up with to try to respect your, like, what the district needs. Like even something just that simple feels like a lot of people could read it and be like, okay, you're not just trying to,
We've been heard.
yeah.
We have to watch on this that we don't cross the line of selling. That's the only issue, is that we actually can't advocate for ourselves here.
Yeah.
On this or on all communication?
Well, on the budget.
But like, could,
On any voting, on any, we can't use public dollars to advocate for a yes or a no on any issue that's being voted on by the public.
To provide unbiased information, but we can't bias the discussion.
And the fine line is like, how do you articulate why putting forward a budget or why you're putting forward any vote on anything? There's inherent bias in that, like, we wouldn't be asking you to do this if we didn't think it made some sense to ask you to do this. So that's the line of how do we inform without advocating when it's pretty clear we think it makes sense for us to do.
Can you help me understand, so the 3.5 on the back, the blue bottom, equals you both has a plus 170.
Yep, and so remember, this is still draft form, so we're looking to, and we can edit this however we see. So that 170 reflects the change from the current year to the to FY25. We didn't do that for anything else, so that 170 could come out, I think. But it also seemed relevant still because we did, you know, as much as we can make an apples to apples comparison, we did gain in pupils. Where it starts to unravel in the complexities of our funding system is we gained pupils and decreased the percent of the total pupils in the state that we represent, which is why we got a tax benefit of 2 cents. Because we were disadvantaged. I mean, that's the mixed message. We were disadvantaged by the weighting formula that increased the pupil count that we have.
So maybe take it out.
So in that same box, you've got the 3.5 budget, the 416 budget, and then you've got a line that's really not defined. It just is in red, says 1,057,165. Doesn't explain exactly what that is unless you're an accountant.
Right.
You know
that's to the
it's-
left.
but it's-
I mean, on the left, it says total savings. Oh, you're talking about the 1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you cross-read, you might, well, you still can't pick it up.
We should have one that says change and put that 1,057 and the 136.
That's the savings between the two numbers.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that tells you that that's the savings between the two numbers.
We might be able to bring real estate by decimals.
And nothing that tells you that the 305 is increased revenue. That's, when I'm looking at that 170.6, I'm looking at, okay, we're not explaining what that is either. But that's what drew my eye to the other ones that aren't really explained either. And even the very bottom, that 687 doesn't have an explanation.
So to your point, Melissa, a change column added to the right of the 416-24 budget column. Where we put this information with pluses and minuses as opposed to parentheses or not.
Yeah, I would definitely, I mean, if you're reducing it and it's an expense, you'd wanna make it, the change from budget to budget is down 1,057,000.
Yep.
Education spending is down the 1,362. I realize the real estate here on this one piece of paper is not a lot, but there's inconsistencies with decimals versus not. We could gain a little real estate there.
Yep.
It also would suggest flipping the top two boxes because you present the numbers and then in this box on the left, you list out the 1,362, so you see the numbers first and then the explanations on the right from a left to right reader.
Oh, I see what you mean. The reductions box where it uses text to explain what was reduced. Moving that to the right and,
And
yeah, okay.
then you could also change the title from what changed from the 3/5/24 budget to how has MAUSD, is that how am I saying it correctly? Okay. How has MSUAD lowered the budget? Lowered this version of the budget. I know that sounds very basic, but just like spelling out this is a lowered budget might be helpful for some folks.
Maybe lowered it in response to community input,
Yes, thank
because
you.
that's how we hear you.
Yeah, very
And
good.
the end result.
Right.
I think, and this is probably my newness, 35 minutes in. All of these acronyms in this box here
Yeah, we're very,
mean nothing to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
So maybe, you've got some text in the bottom, maybe defining LTW, ADM, CLA. They're just, I don't know them, the community is not probably gonna know them, at least not everybody in it.
I wonder if that might be found in the more in-depth section, if we can make that clear. What other information is found.
But if this is important enough for us to put it on the screen,
Yeah.
like right out here, we should be able to define it for our community. And like this QR code is great, I love it because it does like really draw your attention to bring to them more information. We could gain a little real estate to add some of that by just shrinking it a little bit.
Could we achieve that with projected property tax rate with current assumptions without diving into the acronyms?
That's the only way, because we spent a good portion of the board meeting trying to understand PLA or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right?
And I still don't get it, just in case you're wondering.
So whatever, a different way to say it like that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So I wanna check process a little bit because, so the intent is that this goes out tomorrow. And we're talking in somewhat concepts, right? Like, do we want to, in this board, wordsmith how we define CLA or how we define LTW ADM or any of these other things? Like, I just wanna, or if not, I understand why we wouldn't wanna do that. The default then would be that you're giving me authority to define it in the way that I think makes sense, and we get this thing out the door tomorrow.
Yeah, I just think putting it like with that LTW ADM, putting it in a context that's just more digestible for our community, right? So it's the 1.848 per thousand, whatever that is, like maybe that's what just needs to be up there. So it's easy for somebody to say, okay, what is that if I look at my current tax bill? And they can do the math for themselves and feel better about, hopefully, maybe feel better about where they're landing.
Yeah, and I think the one column in the original flyer for the last vote was this estimated change per $100,000 assessed
That's
value.
what I was thinking.
That's what we need to see
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
here. It's not here. And the bottom line is, it doesn't mean what, 1/9 LTW ADM doesn't really matter. People want to know what's coming out of my wallet.
Yeah, I think it's already been said, but I don't think we need any acronyms.
Yeah.
We can just use plain language.
What's the plain language for LTW ADM?
Well, that's about my base.
Yeah, I'm being really good.
Well, what if the box just said projected property tax rate?
Yeah.
You don't have to,
Right.
you don't have to
Yeah.
qualify it with the
Yeah.
yield, you don't have to
Period.
qualify it with the LTADW.
Oh,
You might want to say after CLA, I think people do kind of grasp what that is.
Or at least said
somebody
it's
wants
this
to come
thing that
back and
impacts my
told you-
taxes, yeah.
told you about it specifically, and says, was that based on the 314 deal? Where you can say, sure.
Yeah.
I don't think most people are gonna.
I can tell you the two people
Well,
in New Haven who'd be
really
calling
be
me.
worried
The
about-
purpose of the QR code is for those few people that want to go deep, like
Yeah.
knock yourself out and go as deep as you want. Here it
Yeah,
is.
yep.
Yeah, if we can just add that column for 100,000 of assessed value.
Mine are a little bit more like nitpicky words missing things that in this, on the front, in the first top paragraph. In-person voting will be available at your local polling place. To request to have an MAUSD absentee, this just feels clunky to me. To request, cross out to have an MAUSD absentee ballot be mailed to you.
Or would it be better to say to have an MAUSD absentee ballot mailed to you? Please
Yeah,
contact-
make it less funky. And then I
In-person-
wondered,
In-person should be hyphenated.
That's
We
right.
can,
we can do, but I'm just saying, like, make it less funky. Then the other thing is, do we want to highlight in this first section that it's a tight timeline for those absentee ballots? Like this, to me, would be the place where we really highlight that idea.
And bold absentee ballots that were returned.
I
Yeah.
think the big, I like the big diagonal box up above, if we could throw the absentee ballot
Immediate
thing
attention,
into that box as well somehow.
immediate attention required if you want an absentee ballot. Mhm.
Or maybe the absentee ballot sentence is bolded or something.
Or just absentee ballots available in that.
And when you're saying there are two sentences that speak about the absentee ballot, are you thinking the first one that says, please make a request for mailed ballots? That's the bold. Or that they have to be returned before the close of the town clerk's office on the day before the election or the polling place, or both?
We
It's
wanna
not the day
bold the whole
before.
thing.
May I mean, I'll offer a
Which means you're
suggestion.
holding nothing.
In terms of like editing is to say, it also is that, I would have faith in being like, you have to do this tomorrow. Can you emphasize that absentee ballots need to be returned, but I don't know that we need to wordsmith it, but this is my first day, so maybe we do need to wordsmith it.
I think if we just either underlined it or I think the absentee ballots must be returned section and then also adding it to this top box will be enough to
Mhm.
really earmark the importance of that statement. That's something, because that is one reason why we are having the vote on the 16th is to be respectful of that, so.
So I think what I'm hearing is in that sort of diagonal box, we add April 9th is your last day to request an absentee ballot.
There
That's
you
something
go.
to highlight.
Mhm.
And in the paragraph below, maybe underline or bold the sentence that says absentee ballots must be returned to the town clerk's office the day before election or the polling place, et cetera. So then we, in two different ways, we're raising the key points around absentee ballots and getting that attention. Does that capture what I'm hearing?
Mhm.
It already started with April 9th. We read and underlined.
Right.
Yeah.
My only other comments were on the back, the very little print underneath the projected change in tax rates. Again, it's just clunky wording, but many of the MSU do, yeah, so many MSU, yeah, just change that so it's a little less clunky. I don't think it
Yeah,
has to
that's-
have so many words in it.
Yeah.
And then a period at the beginning of it.
Patrick, I mean, it might be a problem with this, but fine from, from looking at it, having this stuff with the Zoom link up here, visually, it's a little awkward. Do we have to have the, sort of that information at the top? As opposed to getting stuff that you
Yeah, I
really
don't-
want people to see up top and then have the Zoom link down below or
Right.
something?
Yeah, I
Is
think,
there
I don't
some way
think
to
there's
do that?
anything that requires us to structure it that
I
way.
mean, I know we have to have an information meeting, I think that's,
Right.
But
Actually, don't, I mean, is the URL necessary when the meeting ID and the passcode are there? No one's clicking on this if this is going in the mail. Or is this going electronically too? And I.
It's going electronically.
Got it, thank you.
In fact, probably most people will see it electronically
Okay, yeah,
first.
okay, so that makes.
So can we approve this pending Patrick's changes? Is that the sort of basis where we're at? Like approved with
We've thrown some ideas out
With Patrick.
and authorized Patrick to,
interprets based on those ideas?
yeah, fix it.
So we.
Make it better, send it out.
Yes.
So we could make the motion to approve the budget flyer as amended by.
Knowing that the amendment was loose in some cases, and I will,
Do your very best.
yes.
The period.
And I imagine part of this will be Jennifer listening to this conversation on the recording.
Part of this will be Vicky trying to interpret what we just said.
That's why I'm leaning on the recording, because I wouldn't want to put that weight on Vicky's shoulders.
A discussion ensued about how to simplify.
That's an experienced minute taker right there.
What is the most?
Yeah, I'll try one, I guess.
Yep.
So I would say something like, I move that we approve the budget flyer as amended by the administration, consistent with the board discussion.
Oh, I second that motion.
I third that motion.
Good. Way to hit it. Way to hit it.
Knocked it out of the park. Okay, all those in favor of approving the budget flyer as amended by administration? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Okay, the motion passes. Our last item is a discussion on the central office location. This was in response to a lot of community interest about understanding how that whole central office location idea came out, how it's ended, and where we're at. Can I take over a little bit and?
Yeah,
fill in
so-
some gaps?
You know, as we were exploring this, more or less the three options were find someplace else to lease, upfit a space that we own already, or acquire new real estate. For all the reasons we've discussed, the thing that we thought made the most sense was to purchase the building that we're in. That did not get voter approval. It may be worth some conversation about what do we think the understanding was when folks went to the polls? Like, was the belief that saying no to that meant we save dollars? When the reality is saying no to that might mean we spend more dollars?
Exactly right.
In which case, if we think that is true, what do we do with that information? We can accept the vote as it is and move on and take purchasing the building off the table. Or we could put it back for a vote. I don't know how that would be received, saying, we know you said no by a 2-to-1 margin, but we're gonna ask you the very same thing again. That may rub some people the wrong way without some really careful communication. Which we know we've struggled to reach all the nooks and crannies of our community to get information out in a way that's digestible so they can go to the polls in an informed way. I don't think we're in a better position to do that now than we were when this went out the first time. I don't think we've kind of cracked that nut. So either that's still on the table and we ask for the vote again, which is risky, or we accept that it is what it is and that's what the voters said and we move on to plan B. We can look again to see what's the availability of lease space. It's debatable whether that's in the long-term best interest of the district or not. And some of that's because like, I couldn't begin to tell you what's the status of our district 10 years from now. What buildings do we operate? Don't we operate? Has the state stepped in or not stepped in? What's their financial situation like? So it's hard to make long-range plans when there's long-range uncertainty. Because if we thought that at some point, some merger was gonna happen out of necessity, we may think differently about where would we invest in relocating a central office. The idea of yearly leases or short-term leases, I don't think are advantageous. I think it keeps us in a place of unrest. Investing in a long-term lease, like we're still paying for whatever the cost is to upfit a space for us to be in. Even if we're leasing a space, we're just paying in it a different way. So Yeah, those are all the things we wrestled with when we landed on where we landed.
Patrick?
I kind of think that the idea of, putting on the ballot, the idea of purchasing our current building was sort of torpedoed by the fact that it was on the same voting day. Because a lot of people voted for the budget. And I think there are probably a lot of people, a lot of taxpayers out there who said, okay, I can take this increased school budget, but forget, I don't want to spend another 2 million or whatever it was for buying an office.
Mhm.
Even though, and so that connection between saving money and how it affects the budget wasn't, it's a hard thing to explain, and I think that did not come across. So, I'm not sure that, it would be, if we can figure out a way to articulate why it makes some sense to do this, having a second vote isn't, I don't think we should take off the table.
I think another component, and I had emailed this to Patrick, was that the district sent the message a couple of years back that we don't have enough kids, and so we need to close buildings. And so that message went out, and then a couple of years later, a message goes out saying, we want to build another building. And I think that did not resonate well, just in terms of PR and kind of what the long-term plan of the school district is.
Well, it wasn't build another building.
But why are we acquiring another building if we have so much space in the ones we already own and take care of?
And I think, but what I heard loud and clear serving as a poll person was that it had nothing to do, the crossover between the two budgets had nothing to do, that folks really believed that we were not in the business of being landlords, number one. And number two, if we had enough money to spend on another building, then we had enough money to fund all of the services that the students need without taxing the taxpayers. I mean, that was a very clear message. And I would not want to take this back to voters at this point.
Yeah. I got information like that too from people, and we're wondering why, what are other options? Are we re-renting? Are we going into the schools? Are we finding spaces that we have already existing to put the
Yeah,
superintendency? So
I don't think people understand. It's tough to educate even people who understand the issue. Why you can't just take central office and just put them in empty classrooms with a folding table and chair and some Wi-Fi.
Well, no, I don't think that's what the thought was.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that I definitely got that.
Yeah, I didn't,
Like,
I didn't get.
we don't need a fancy office for central
Yeah, that
office.
was
We
loud and
just need,
clear.
put you in, whatever empty space there is. And if that means your central office is now
Yeah,
in 5 different towns, well, that's okay with us.
people were asking like, so what are these costs and what are we paying for furniture? I mean, was Peter Ryer's back
Yeah.
who used that as an example, and
Do we
And
really
they-
need to
and they were-
spend, $1 million
right,
renovating a space to put central office in it?
exactly.
Because they don't know the dynamics of the program. They
Right.
don't know the privacy concerns. They don't know the security issues.
Right.
So there's a whole education thing that, the people who do their own home improvements, they're just like, hey, what's the problem? Just putting central office wherever we want to put them,
And not
All these empty
discounting
spaces.
what was coming at you. I think it's a lot of different opinions and,
Absolutely.
there's a lot
It
of
can't be $1 million
armchair
to
experts
put
that are.
central office in an empty classroom.
Yeah, well, and the other point that, when people were saying, well, why can't you just start this now? Well, have you tried to nail down a contractor for anything recently? Because they're out at least a year.
Well,
And, oh, by the way,
And you still have to design something,
design, and then there's all of
and you have to procure it.
the procurement piece of it. So yeah, it's a very complicated process. No matter which process you choose to go with, there's a lot to both. So, yeah.
What's our timeline, Patrick?
You said we could get a year extension.
So our lease is up this coming October, and we have the option for a 1-year extension from that, which is why we timed the vote when we did, because if we were gonna build something or to do some major construction project, we needed that lead time for everything we just talked about. To have it completed by the end of not this coming summer, but the following summer to be able to move in the start of that next school year.
And if we do something in one of those buildings, we don't need the town's approval to do that, to hire a designer, to
Only-
go to Beaman to.
Only
renovate
if we're
a classroom.
tapping into the capital reserve fund, that requires a vote of the electorate. But if we have the funds in our budget, then we wouldn't need voter approval. Specifically, the voter approval came in this case because the board doesn't have authority on its own to acquire real estate. We needed the electorate's authority to purchase real estate.
How many people work full-time at central office, in the Bristol building?
Yeah, let me think about that. 13?
And then how many are at Beaman?
So those aren't central office employees. They work.
How many extras?
I don't even know if I'd characterize it that way. So there are offices at Beaman that have 5.
I know there's 2 rooms, I don't know if it's more like 9 at least. That depends on that, we're still, there's another 5, and we're
So
You're a long way away.
I know, but this is a very comfortable seat.
Just thinking about people who are listening on Zoom.
that meant, just jump in and say, like, I think any discussion about kind of central office and its needs and what we might do is sort of, immersed, I guess, in the discussion of like the role of central office staff, right? It seems like most of the comments about like budget tend to circulate around like, what the hell's the central office for? Like, why can't we cut there? And I think in some ways, it requires sort of an evaluation by the board and then a sort of defense, a very public defense of the need for those positions, right? And so if we can like better define the role of our admin, what they're contributing specifically to the district and in terms of our needs as a district, that might set up the like conditions to make an argument for what kind of space we need. Right, because I do get the sense with these, like, oh, just put them in a classroom, like, that has to be tied to a fundamental misunderstanding about the day-to-day role of those administrative personnel. Right, and I don't know how you convince people to spend money on the space if they don't actually know what that space is housing.
Well, if we take a step back, I think that's a really good point, but if we take a step back and look at the Levinson report, let's delve a little bit more deeper into that as part of the board as well.
I think so. I think like as we think about next year's budget, clearly we have a responsibility to address concerns of the community that have often been centered around that, amongst other levers that there might be. But it feels like through that process, we might then be able to better define the needs of central office, whatever it ends up as, right? And then that might make it easier to make the case for why you really need this kind of space rather than what feels to me like a very roughshod understanding of like what this role is and where they could do that work, where you could effectively do that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember requesting the plans that you did for the top floor of Beaman that Truex put together. And just looking at their program work and what they were suggesting to do for renovations. And I could see, you know, the logic behind what they were up to in terms of the program issues that you had with the way that the place was laid out for classroom use versus office use. But that's not an understanding that the general public's going to have and easily grasp.
Right.
So there is some value in what Mike's talking about as a defense to try to more purposefully educate folks on some of those issues.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the idea of same way we would, like, what's the role of any staff person? But so for me, it's definitely so we understand the role of all our nurse network coming in doing their presentation, right? It would just be an understanding, generally speaking, of the roles. So for me, it's put it in a school building for sure. And whatever whatever it costs, I just would love to see it connect to students also getting something out of the deal. I mean, right, if somehow attaching it to Mausd, because we need a second elevator here anyway, and you're gonna put an elevator wherever you put it, even if it's the more expensive option, you're getting something out of it that we also need, if that is logical, or it would be able to be shared by the students and, yeah, so I don't know. So for me, it's really, where would it also impact positive outcomes for students? It just, and I know that that creates huge challenges and it makes the cost go up, but you know, are there certain areas that are really poorly, have some temperature challenges that, because you do have to be year round, so you have to address livable temperatures in the middle of the summer, right? So where else would having a system highly benefit if it was I mean, I know that's where my mind is going when I'm thinking about it, is where would it, we're gonna spend more and we're gonna do this, let's, you know, where will it also impact student outcomes? Because I don't know when or how we would be able to do it, or if we're making this commitment where there's something that we're going to be saying that we're giving up in order to do so. And that's a big deal right now. But and I don't think, for me, I guess I kind of got past the idea of, if it were, for instance, in Beaman, and then if Beaman did go back to its town at some point, anything that we're doing, any playground at any school that's getting upgraded, any work that's happening in any of the buildings, were those buildings to go back to their town, even if we didn't get the financial benefit of that, because it's for $1, it's still making that space that much more usable for the community in the long run. So an accessible playground will exist in that town for a community center or whatever it may be. So, or it makes it more easier for them to repurpose for, I don't know. So I guess that it's just, I know that the cost could explode really quickly with those ideas, but I think that there's no way we're gonna know right now, certainly not soon enough to put on the flyer what that will look like, other than whether or not we're putting it in a school or not, I think is all we could really come to a decision on right now.
Well, to that point, one of the things that we had looked at years ago was if we did renovate this gray building on the corner here of Mausd, that the potential to add public restrooms there for the folks that are, you know, watching football or lacrosse or whatever's going on that field. Right now, they have to go in and use the facilities in the building, so that's a value add that can be incorporated into a bigger project. And there is a cost to that, of course, but there's also a value add as a result.
Is this the finance and facilities first, like, hurdle to tackle?
Sure.
It's that,
Like, relook at those options that Kevin, Kathy and I looked at back in July?
yeah, or think of other options if there's something else out there, but we will have to have a home at some point.
Because if you
And
work
we-
back from 2025, right? October
Right, and that's the
2025.
thing, this timeline is really predicated on a construction project. So if that's something we're considering, or if that's what we default to, we have to have time to make sure we do that. We can also approach again the person who owns the building and just see, like, now that this has failed, like, what's the thinking the same about not interested in another lease, like, so we'll go back to the drawing board in terms of options in light of this. And it's just if not the building we're in, our exploration has been that there isn't another space for lease available, at least immediately, and the upfit cost would be as significant anywhere as they would be in one of our own buildings. And we're paying for those upfit costs no matter where we go, even if we don't end up owning it at the end. And the idea of leasing space outside of our district didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Like, there's probably space in South Burlington that we could release, but I don't know that that's what we want to do.
That'd be great for me. I
Right.
make meetings all the time.
There's some mixed messages to have central office for MAUSD in South Burlington, right?
Well, and that's something that I hear from people is how wonderful would it be to have the administration closer to the kids and just, not only for oversight, but when you're working and doing your work and you hear them laughing and giggling and
Absolutely.
pumping on the swing and like, that feeds your soul a little bit
Yep.
when,
I love
do
that
that
aspect of it. And central office being the place where sometimes angry people want to come and express their opinion, and drawing that kind of traffic to a school. There's a risk inherent in that as well, and that's the one piece that's kind of the hang.
Well, you also kind of wonder if that wouldn't temper a lot of people. That they might not express their anger if they're having to walk near or by children.
You might think.
Can't be too careful.
I promised myself I wouldn't do this, go into the past, but I came from a building where the superintendency was on campus, right inside. And it was awesome. Teachers could go visit and the superintendent came in and was actively part of the state community. So I think there are a lot of perks for that.
I agree.
More to come on that. Any other comments about or discussion about the central office location for tonight? Okay. We'll move then to the public comment section. Is there any public comment?
I really appreciate the folks that came out earlier. And they gave us a very clear message. And I really appreciate them taking the time to come.
Don't see anyone on Zoom or in person. For the April meeting prep, please make sure that your agendas for your committees are in on time. And then Kristen Toy, you're on deck for meeting highlights tonight, my friend.
Did you get mine?
Yes.
Should we define the on time? So for an April 2nd meeting, which I think is true, the agendas will need to be warned by Friday.
Yes. Yes.
Mike's your
You
chair.
will.
Do we have committee?
Sure.
Automatically.
I know Daniela, you had sent me, you were interested in policy and governance, and Melissa, I'm assuming you're interested in the finance.
I don't know why you.
They'll be looking for those. Steve is right now the interim chair for policy and governance. And who's sure, well, finance and facilities merged, so look for an email from Mike.
Just Kevin's gone.
Yes, Kevin's gone.
But you can replace me at the first meeting.
You
You can.
No turf wars here to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so you have the board evaluation up?
I've got it.
Awesome, Kathy. Great.
Okay, the meeting, what's the level of engagement of all board members, high or low?
Great.
Yeah.
Was the agenda followed? Yes or no? Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board, yes or no?
Yes.
Is the chair effective in fostering professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members in ensuring the integrity of the board process, yes or no? You can tell me if you have other comments and your other feedback for the chair.
Thank you.
Impact meeting.
I made up that we were there. I'm keeping this. I apparently didn't do that.
Well, you notice the times were effectively non-existent.
Yeah.
What went well for the meeting,
Yeah.
with the meeting?
Get up before midnight.
Public comment? And the addition of new board members?
Yep.
I thought a lot of thoughtful deliberation.
Whatever you should sort of.
Yeah.
Not bad.
What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings? Food, can I hear? food?
Yeah.
Right.
Food.
Yeah, always like.
Okay, done. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy, for
Thank
doing
you.
that. Okay, need a motion to adjourn at 9:56 PM.
So moved.
Kathy, second? Who? Melissa?
I guess.
Yeah, put Melissa on. All those in favor to adjourn at 9:56 PM, say aye.
Aye.